Hello, and welcome to Co-Teaching in the Middle School and High School Math Classroom. My name is Misty Carr, and I'm a Special Education Consultant with NKCES.
Hi, my name is Kim Snowball. I work at NKCES. I am the math consultant for the region, and we welcome you to today's session. Today, we're going to be working through some learning intentions that actually help us understand the co-teaching models, but we're targeting really three pieces. Integrating the effective practices, the strategies for SDI, specially designed instruction, with co-teaching. And we will also want to make sure that we can come from it from our particular roles. So we're going to define roles and responsibilities within this co-teaching model. And then within the session, we're going to define what these co-teaching models are, but target really the most effective ones. And so we welcome you today. Please be aware that there is a welcome page that you have access to, which will actually help guide you. It's kind of a set of directions per se, and you have some guided notes in each one of the sections. You have additional resources, and then in the center of the page, you will be looking at the links for the videos. Now, if you go to the bottom of that page, there is going to be a spot for you to access your certificate. You will have a spot to jot down those password and code phrases. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So, welcome again.
So let's take a minute and think about what the research says about co-teaching. Now, unfortunately, there's not a ton of research about co-teaching itself as being a way to increase student achievement. However, there have been potential benefits that have been identified for both teachers and students, such as teachers can benefit from the professional growth of working with another teacher. Students benefit from all the ways that we can provide flexible grouping and increase student opportunities to respond. And students also benefit from being around their peers with co-teaching when we're using that as a service delivery model. We also know that implementation of co-teaching has been uneven because some teachers receive support and training and they get to know their co-teachers ahead of time, and some teachers are just kind of thrown together 2 days before school starts. So it just kind of depends on what's been done at the school and the master schedule and how people have been grouped together and how that whole planning process before the co-teaching occurred happened. We also know that the biggest barrier to co-teaching is a lack of planning time. So that has been identified. And I know many administrators are remedying this by looking at their master schedule and really changing things up, but there are also ways to get around a lack of common planning time, and we'll talk about those in a later module. We also know that there's little or no evidence of modifications or individualized instruction or providing SDI in co-taught classes. And in fact, what often happens in co-taught classes, particularly in the middle school and high school level, is that the one teach, one assist model is most often used. And Dr. Marilyn Friend, who is, just the co-teaching giant that we all know about and we all know and love her, she refers to this one teach, one assist as whack-a-mole. And, when she said that, I just pictured it in my head. We all know that the general education teacher is delivering the instruction, and the special education teacher is just kind of walking around the room whispering to kids and like going to this kid and then going over here to this kid and going over here to this kid. Well, that's not really modifying or doing individualized instruction or SDI. But we do have evidence that that's the most common thing that we're doing. So we need to think if we're playing whack-a-mole, is that moving students forward in their achievement? And we know it's not.
Well, it's time for your first password code phrase. And so we want to make sure that you go to the proper location to store this information, because you will need to put them in order when you go to the link for the certificate. So the next slide will actually show you a little bit. Let's look at that for a second. At the bottom or the back page or the next page, page 2, step 3 is there. And we've just provided you a place to jot these down. So this, on line 1, you're going to write the word benefits, benefits. And so that is your first password code phrase for today. So keep this next to you, because when we get to the second video where it's talking about co-teaching, you're going to get a second passcode or password And then when you work through the SDI module, you will also have a third password. But then there also is going to be 7 different content questions that you'll have to answer through. And then as long as you get an 8 out of 10 on the assessment / quiz, you should be fine. You'll receive your certificate in the mail. The form is a direct link is going to be on that step 3. So make sure that you go there. And I'm just going to say this ahead of time. Make sure that you type the information in there just as you want it to appear for your name, because that's the way it's going to appear in the actual certificate. And then don't forget that you also need to make sure you type your email in correctly. Go back and revisit that, look at it again, because if you have a typo in there, the certificate won't go to you and you have to redo the entire assessment again. So be careful. Now, what we're wanting to talk about a little bit is Misty and I both come from 2 different backgrounds. I'm the general education teacher, and I bring that perspective. Misty is the special education teacher. And so if we were partnered in a co-taught classroom together, there is a unique expertise that we would bring to the table. So here we are. Misty and I are going to talk about our perspective of how we handled co-teaching when we were in the classroom. And they're going to be from 2 different lenses. The general education teacher is responsible for so much of setting up the classroom. And a lot of times what happens is, in my situation, I was thinking, oh, this is my classroom. And that's probably the biggest misnomer there. We need to be thinking this is going to be our classroom. We're going to be working together. And so parity signals is something that we're going to talk about when we get into the co-teaching portion of this. I'm just going to kind of reflect a little bit. When I first started teaching, it was really the traditional 1 teach, 1 assist model. And so we never really delved into the other models. And now as I look back and I think of the conversations that I've had with co-teachers, I understand that I have to take ownership of the fact that I did not create the best partnership within a co-taught classroom. And one of the resources that we actually will share with you at the end, talk about co-teaching is kind of like dating. You really do need to get to know each other. It's kind of like a blind date, and we set this up and we need to learn a little bit about what makes each other tick so that we can actually be the best and create the best partnership there. And as a general education teacher, we tend to maybe take ownership, too much ownership of the classroom, to the point where we feel like we're bringing guests in. And this is not about guests. This is about, we both bring our unique expertise that we bring to the table. And when we respect that, when we actually look at that other person and say, from a general education teacher, I want to say, hey, my co-taught person is strategy specialist, and I need to respect that. And hopefully that is relayed to our students, that we are both teachers and we are there to help them in our co-taught classroom. It really takes a life-changing event to let go of total control sometimes. So I want to say, with deep respect for my co-teaching partners that I've had in the past, is that the value and the expertise that they bring to the table will help create the best learning environment for our students. Misty?
So thanks, Kim, for sharing your perspective as a general education teacher. Now, my perspective as a special education teacher is a little different, but if we look at it, we're really coming at this from the same kind of point of view, actually. When I first started teaching, co-teaching really wasn't a thing in my district. My first year, I did I pulled the kids out of the classroom and we went to my little resource room. And then the next few years, I was actually teaching in a self-contained program. So I had my own classroom. I shared it with paraeducators and I shared it with support personnel and OTs and PTs. So I was used to sharing things a lot with people, but it was still kind of like my own classroom, so I was used to my own space. Like Kim was used to having, her classroom, her space. And then when I started co-teaching, gulp is right. Like I felt very intimidated because as a special education teacher, it is very intimidating to go into another teacher's space because sometimes we teachers can be a little territorial. I mean, I know that feeling because I've had my own classroom before, even though I did share it with lots and lots of people. So it is intimidating to kind of go in there. And as a special education teacher, I wasn't a math major in school. So, I was told, hey, you're going to co-teach geometry. And I'm like, I haven't had a geometry class since 1995. Okay, we can do this, So, but I felt kind of ashamed of myself for that. And so I didn't right away tell my general education teacher because I was trying to put on a brave face and look like, oh, yeah, I have this, I've got this, But we need to come from a place of vulnerability and open up those lines of communication with our general education teacher, because as special education teachers, we may not have that content background right away. We'll get it because that's the cool thing about special ed teachers, right? Like we can go and teach biology and English too and geometry, we'll go in all those classes if we have to. It's difficult, but we can do those things because at the end of the day, we're the strategy specialists and we do have a lot to offer. So as special education teachers, we need to make sure that we're communicating with our general education teachers, maybe some of the apprehensions that we have, but also what our strengths are and what we bring to the table and what we can bring that maybe we don't have that content knowledge yet, but we can sure help with vocabulary in the beginning, and we can sure help with study guides, and we can sure help with strategy resources that will help all the students in the classroom. So if, as a special education teacher, if we're going to kind of sit on the back burner and just fall into that comfortable one teach, one assist mode, we're not really doing what we're supposed to do to move all the students forward. So that's where it's time to be vulnerable. It's time to have really good conversations with your general education teachers, and it's time to advocate for your students, because our general education teachers are also coming with a wealth of experience with co-teaching, and some of those experiences may not have been positive. Sometimes, there's a stereotype that the special ed teacher is just coming in, holding the coffee, going, checking in on the kids and zooming out. But we can't let ourselves be seen that way because we have so much more to offer than that. And, our gen ed teachers may not understand what we're dealing with. I've never been in the same classroom when I was co-teaching. I shared an office space and I was moving around the building all day. And sometimes I'd be in the hallway and one of my students on my caseload was having a meltdown. So I'd have to de-escalate the situation. I'd run in, I'd be like sweating through my clothes. And I'm like, okay, I'm here. But, my gen ed teacher had no idea what had just happened. And they just see, oh, you're finally here, but that's where the communication piece is so, so important. And when you get into the groove, when you open up that communication and you jump in and you show your general education teacher what you have to offer, it can just be so awesome for the kids to see that model of two professionals working together, getting along. You're modeling that awesome relationship for students. So from the special ed teacher, don't be afraid, jump in and start communicating. And we just can't take a back burner and just be comfortable and just say, oh, well, I think the gen ed teacher doesn't want me to say anything. We don't know that. You have to, and the gen ed teacher may have really bad experiences. Maybe like Kim, like I really want her to do some more, but she's not. So, we've got to jump in and make sure that we're making our areas of expertise known. So also in this training, we're going to talk about planning, because planning is really, really vital to co-teaching. And I know some of us do have common planning times. And even if we do have common planning times, I know it can get very hectic in the school year with emergency ARC meetings, things that happen, testing, all kinds of things happen. However, planning can also be done, the beauty of Google Drive anymore. We can co-plan together on shared documents. It's amazing. So during this training, I'll talk about planning from a special education perspective, because special education teachers have to look at our students in the co-taught classroom who have IEPs, and we have to look at what specially designed instruction is in place on that IEP. We have to consider those things when we're planning units together and choosing co-teaching models. So I know it can be overwhelming to look at a class of kids and go, everybody needs something different, but actually in the math classroom, we can kind of look at those SDIs and see overall there might be some trends with some of our students, and that can help us when we're planning. Are we going to use alternative teaching? Are we going to use parallel teaching? How can we group things together for our students? So I'll go over a planning process, and there are some handouts in the SDI video section that will help special education teachers with the whole planning.
And from the general education teacher planning perspective, we are going to be looking at macro planning versus our weekly lesson plans. And we have created some links and some resources within that welcome page so that you can access them. You'll be able to upload them, edit them. We really want to give you some tools to move the conversation forward so that we do know when we're in that classroom working with students together, that I know what is what the content is, but I also now know what the specially designed instruction will be implemented that day. But also, we will be able to create the best co-teaching model. So it's not that a one size fits all, but depending on what type of lesson it is, which model we'll actually be using. And all of these things will be planned ahead of time. We won't be winging it and being reactionary. We actually will have this very systematic approach to our partnership. So it's going to be exciting, and I hope that you find all of these tools very, very useful. So now we've just concluded our introduction, and so if you go back to that welcome page, you'll find that we have our learning intentions there, the link to the instruction video, but also there are 2 additional links for you to access creating the optimal opportunities to learn mathematics. And then on KDE's website, we've actually just put a direct link in for collaborative teaching practice guidance, just practical tips on how to implement co-teaching effectively. And now we're on step 2. So please go to your welcome page and download the guided notes. And what you're wanting to do is just have a hard copy next to you so that you can keep track of the information. This information will help you when you go to the last certificate link, where you're going to have 7 questions that are going to actually be from the each one of the sections. Remember, there are a lot of resources here, and we want you to have copies of templates and unit planning documents. I just can't say enough about the resources that you'll have at your fingertips. And then after you finish the co-teaching model, then you'll go to the specially designed instruction, and then finally go back to that page where we just talked about where you're going to apply for your certificate. Each one of these steps 2, for the guided notes, for co-teaching and specially designed instruction, you will in fact have a password code phrase that you'll need to document as well. So here we are. Click on the next link, and we'll see you there.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the training.
Yes, thanks.